recently there has been a lot of talk about colonizing Mars. Of course, we're human beings and we would like to actually do adventurous things and explore, but really, there are a number of issues that people need to think about because Mars is a very, very different place. For example, the gravity on Mars is only 38% of the gravity that we have here on Earth. And people might think, oh yes, with that I'll be able to break the long jump record because I can run and jump, a lot further. It isn't that simple because the ground itself is very hard. It's hard rock. So you've got a problem. You'll break probably most of your bones. That might happen. The other thing as well about Mars is that although it is very similar to Earth, what we then have is a situation about its atmosphere. Here on Earth we're used to the atmosphere. You probably don't realize that actually there is atmospheric pressure on you. The other thing about Mars, just to continue, is that because there isn't a magnetic field, there's a lot of radiation. So even if someone got to Mars, then you have to actually protect yourself against radiation. And such protection becomes extremely important because it's not just protecting yourself. That radiation is going to affect your instrumentation. So your electronics, this thing of using the phone and ringing someone, they won't work. And the other thing about is that within that atmosphere, although it is very, very low, you have got a problem. There are dusty storms there. Again, these knock out all communications. And the other problem that we have with radiation, we've already seen it on Earth, how radiation can really, really destroy, life and humans. We've seen it with the atomic bombs, as they were called, nuclear bombs, and how people sort of began to more or less mutate. What happens if you travel through such a radiation field, through deep space? What's going to happen to you? People talk of colonizing Mars as if it is something which is like going to some point here on Earth. If you look at the pictures of Earth, it's very, very easy to see where you could actually build something, where there are some trees, etc. But with Mars, it's all very barren. And the other thing with Mars is that the effect of having very, very low pressure, i.e. an atmosphere which is neither here nor there, and an atmosphere which is escaping all the time, is that you will never find running water on Mars. Because the pressure is so low, water cannot exist as running water. It's either as ice, as you have on the ice caps, or you have it as water vapor. Because the moment the ice melts, there is not enough atmospheric pressure to keep it down. It just goes woof, and that is called sublimation. So we have all these issues with Mars. Then the other thing is what kind of physiological response have we got when it comes to radiation, being exposed to radiation? We also have got a situation that we are human beings, and I am sure that, we all take a comfort break. We go, to the toilet, we use the toilet, etc., etc. But when we do that, here on Earth, it doesn't really matter because we're used to the various bacteria which come out of our bodies for that kind of thing. When you're on Mars and you do something like that, I'm not saying that there will be a toilet which you can flush because there won't be one, but just think what happens to the bacteria which comes out of the human being. If there is life on Mars, it might be bacterial life. And then those two things mix in, we could have an Armageddon, which actually no one knows what is going to happen. So we have got a lot of things which we have to think about before we talk about colonizing Mars, which is why when you look at NASA's program, for example, they are talking of probably doing it by 2035. That's 2035. But there are a lot of things which one needs to be aware of before that happens, which is why NASA is going to move an asteroid to come within the orbit of the moon, so that actually our astronauts can go on to that and actually see how one actually, behaves on it. Because until you actually go there as a human being, you do not know exactly how various things are. Robotic information is very, very useful, but it is not as useful as actually having a human being who can actually interpret those things, because those will be valuable for the trip to Mars. There are a number of things on the surface of Mars itself. I've got a few, sheets here, and this is still talking of the atmosphere on Mars. As you can see, you notice that actually the temperature of the atmosphere, I'm talking of on average around, it varies between, those, it's around minus 81 Fahrenheit or minus 63 centigrade. So that could be the chill factor that you feel if you're walking around there. Whereas on Earth, we're around 15 degrees, and that sort of, we're used to that. So you can't just sort of, go for a little walk and enjoy yourself. And then the other interesting thing about Mars, which I think is absolutely a wonderful one, is the whole area. I have got some notes here which I was using in teaching, that when you have Mars across there, and then you have the sun here, and then you have the Earth across there, as they orbit around, there comes a time when actually Mars and Earth are on opposite sides of the sun, and the sun blocks communications between the things. It's like looking at, not looking at something, just imagine yourself dancing at a bonfire, but the partner that you're dancing with is on the other side of the fire, and it's a very big fire. You won't actually be able to tell who is on that other. You might get the odd flicker, which is why when Mars is in conjunction, solar conjunction is what it's called, communications with rovers, between the rovers and Earth, are cut, for the simple reason that you can't do them. But the rovers keep on sending out a little signal, because just as you watch a dance, sort of through the flames, you can't tell what is what, but occasionally you'll think, oh yeah, there's someone dancing over there. Those sort of beeps are quite good in actually, if we get one through, we know that the spacecraft, the rover rather, is still working. That's all it is. But this lasts for quite a time. And so one has to be very careful of actually saying, oh yes, we'll colonize Mars, everything will be the same as on Earth. For a start, Mars, it takes 687 days for Mars to go around the sun. The Earth, which is on an inner orbit, only takes 365 days. So when you compare the two, the year on Mars is nearly twice as long as here. So you're talking of seasons which are much longer. Okay, I hear people complaining of the winter. The winter here is only 3 months. How can people you have to prepare to actually be there for 6 months, which is really cold. The summers, which are supposedly, here people can walk around in swimsuits, etc. It's nice and warm. On Mars, although you've got the surface temperature can be 0 in midsummer at the equator. Now that never happens here. For that you need to go to the Antarctic or to Siberia or the Antarctica. In general, we've got certain things that we've got used to here on Earth. We've evolved to lead a life on Earth. So if we are to colonize Mars, one has to be very careful. You have to prepare yourself for particular contingencies, which is why practice runs are made, okay? I'm not talking of, crazy things where people are doing things for gimmicks, like the Mars One. I'm not talking of that. I'm talking of real issues. So if you look at, say, the Mars Society, they actually have analogues of Mars where people try and live as teams on there. Then the other thing we think about is, this has been mentioned by, I can't remember the name of the particular astronaut who actually said that if you imagine a Beetle, that's the car, those little VWs, and imagine your best friend, and being in that, you sit in the Beetle, not going out of the Beetle, wearing some diapers, if ever you need to use nature's call, you just do it there. That actually, after a short while, you'll not be happy to be, even if it's your best friend, we all have got friends, and some of my best friends, I don't want to be locked in a room with them for months on end, because we like variety, we are human beings. So all these things have been taken into account, because space travel, you need to actually understand the psychology of people who go out there. Astronauts and cosmonauts go through very, very serious psychological testing, and everyone believes in them. But it still happened, because there was the shuttle flight, which came back, and the commander of the flight had started an affair with one of the people who was on the flight. And what happened? The person who'd been on the flight, Novak, then decided to put on diapers in Houston, Texas, jumped into her car, did not stop anywhere, but went straight to Miami, to Florida, to make sure that she could actually kill her rival in this affair. And if the psychology of being enclosed is someone, for someone who's passed all psychological tests, has just been away on the International Space Station for 3 months, can behave like that, it tells us that we have a lot of work to do if we're going to have people locked together for 8 months. Which is why the next mission to the space station, the rotation, as we call it, which is going to happen March 25th, I think, that is going to be for a year. That is going to tell us a lot more. But what we really need to know is how we as human beings behave, and actually make sure that wherever we're colonizing, we actually colonize in a very good way, because we know when we colonize parts of this earth, we really, really mess people up. There are so many messed up nations on this earth, and that partly is through colonialization.